You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio, welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast on NFL Draft Week. We are glad to have you here alongside Mike Chappell, Joe Hopkins. I'm Dave Griffiths. A lot to talk about today, and of course, we have delivered so much already, so we do thank you for downloading, subscribing to us for all of the draft content that we have produced, going over individual positions, going over everything the Colts have said up until now, which has been quite hefty. And today we'll get into some more details of what Chris Ballard spoke in front of the media on Friday. So we've got some more from that this week. We'll make our predictions. What do we think is going to go down in this draft? Maybe an 11th hour rise to the top of the draft board. Perhaps. You got to follow Reddit, guys. You got to do it. But first,
Mike, are you on Reddit?
No. What is Reddit?
you shouldn't be. It's okay.
Yeah,
you
it's
don't,
all right.
you don't need to be there. We will start with the news. And the biggest news around the NFL this week is that Aaron Rodgers is going to the New York Jets. It is a trade.
Who knew?
Exactly. Well, they finally agreed on compensation is what it came down to. And the Jets get Rodgers plus the 15th overall pick in this week's draft and the 5th round pick of the Packers in 2023 this year. The Packers get the 13th overall pick, so it's a first-round pick swap there. They get the 42nd overall pick, a second-rounder, and then they get a 6th-round pick this year, plus a second-round pick next year that can become a first-rounder if Rodgers hits 65% of snaps played this year. So that's a big mouthful there. Essentially, it can be a pick swap this year and get a second-round pick and maybe a first-round pick next year for having Aaron Rodgers. Chap, this was you already alluded to it. Who knew that this was coming? But it is quite the haul for a quarterback who is 38 years old, who's going into the conference that has quite a bit of the better quarterback play certainly already. But the Jets knew that if they wanted to compete with what they have this year, they performed better last year than a lot of people expected. If they wanted to compete with the best teams in the AFC, they needed a quarterback. They went out and Rodgers was their man. He will be add yet another good quarterback here in the AFC that will have to compete in the playoffs or for the playoffs.
And that's why the price, for the most part, doesn't matter. If you think he's going to give you, that chance to win a championship, which he does, then there has to be a point, obviously, where you won't give up stuff. But this is sort of reasonable. The only thing I was surprised at is there's nothing tied to whether he plays another year. There was a lot of talk that they would want maybe that future first-round pick to hinge on him playing 2 years. That wasn't the case. And we've seen, if you believe that guy can do it, Tom Brady, Matthew Stafford, you do it. And the Jets are probably more well-positioned for life after Rodgers than the Rams or Bucks were for life after their old quarterbacks. So you go and do it. And, kudos to them, and we'll see if it works out.
Joe, your instant reaction to Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets?
I thought the Packers got more than I thought they would, because my understanding was the Jets was really a one-man auction there for Rodgers, and there wasn't a lot of competition, so I didn't think that probably first-round pick next year was going to be included. So good for the Packers for getting a pretty hefty haul for a quarterback who almost retired this past few months ago, and they would have gotten none of this and just been stuck with no extra picks and Jordan Love. Second of all, feels really familiar as a Colts fan, doesn't it? I would just caution the Jets fans out there. We've seen the successes with Brady and Stafford, as you allude to, and Rodgers is certainly better than Phillip Rivers or Carson Wentz or Matt Ryan. But there's also the Russell Wilson examples out there and several Colts examples. So I'm kind of hesitant to go ahead and say the Jets are a contender. We've seen Aaron Rodgers and very good Packer teams in the past kind of flounder and flame out once they get to the playoffs. So we'll see how far he gets New York, but it certainly makes for a very interesting division, the AFC East, and I can't wait to see what happens.
Are they third in the division still? Second, maybe behind Buffalo. Buffalo, the Jets,
Buffalo's
and
still
Miami.
one.
Miami, yeah. I think
Where do you
Buffalo's
put Miami?
still one, but geez,
Miami and New
Tua.
York's pretty neck and neck.
pretty close.
I guess it depends on if Tua can still stay healthy.
Right.
Right.
But that's the point. We'll get into it. But like you talked about, that's why it's so important for the Colts to get their guy tomorrow, because look at. I mean, you can list 10 guys, 10 quarterbacks in the AFC that you think 5 or 6 of them are elite, and the others, I mentioned are the Deshaun Watsons and people like that you really don't know yet, but got to get your guy.
Yeah, I saw someone on Twitter list just rankings of AFC quarterbacks and rankings of NFC quarterbacks. There were 2 different graphics, and like the AFC went 9, 10 deep. That guys that you think could do damage in the playoffs. The NFC went like 2 or 3 deep, and then all of a sudden at 3 or 4, Kirk Cousins was there, and you're like, well, you're immediately getting into Kirk Cousins territory.
Yeah.
And I think the Colts would have loved to have Kirk Cousins the last couple of years and what he was able to produce. But if you're talking about playoffs and doing damage in the playoffs, it's just AFC heavy, complete AFC heavy. And they're going to get maybe one with Houston if they decide to pick one at 2. They're going to get maybe one with the Colts if they decide to pick one at 4. So you've got as Chap said, you got to have somebody there to be able to compete with those big boys.
And I also saw someone tweeted out, it might have been Fox Sports, that now after this trade, Dak Prescott is the longest tenured quarterback in the NFL.
How about that?
Which just kind of blows my mind. Long gone are the days of the
Tom Brady for
Roethlisberger's,
15
Eli
years,
Manning, and Brady.
That was an era. It really was that era of those guys. And
Wasn't Peyton kind of the first to wear? Because I remember he signed his extension in training camp of 11.
I think that's fair.
And he said, I would look forward to being a Colt for life.
Yeah.
And it lasted not for life.
No, it did not. So this is the new era right now. Like that era is gone. We've started a new one with young quarterbacks, the Burrows, the Mahomeses, the Allens. Like this is definitely a new time to talk about about football. And we try to box things in and talk about grand things like the Manning Brady era. This is another one right now. Is what I'm saying.
And I think that point's valid, and I also think part of it is a philosophy change with teams where teams are much more willing to move on from solid to good quarterbacks because they have this idea that if you don't have an elite guy, it's almost not worth keeping around, that you got to keep searching for that guy who can get you over the hump because it's so hard to build up an almost perfectly roster around just an okay quarterback and make it to the Super Bowl and win that Super Bowl.
Well, all that discussion about quarterback leads us right into the NFL draft because the Colts pick 4th overall. There are widely considered to be 4 or 5 quarterbacks that will go in the first round of this year's draft. Most of them, all of them, have something you can pick at, something you can hem and haw at. But all of them also have a reason that they are projected to go in the first round because they have a lot of potential. They have a lot of guys who are a lot of guys. When I say guys, I mean scouts across the league who are intrigued by what they can do in the league. And for all of them, it will depend on the coaching they get. It'll depend on the place they go. It'll depend on the threats at receiver, whatever chap that they have. Because history tells us that even if there are 5 guys projected to go in the first round, only 1 or 2 of them will pan out.
And 2 of them won't.
Yeah,
I mean,
almost guaranteed.
Flat won't. That's what history tells you. And that's why you just have to trust what you do. We'll get into it with Chris Ballard, but he said it's like when you're in college and you're getting ready for a test. If you really prepare for the test, you're okay. And when you don't, you're sweating bullets. And I've been there before, both ways. But you trust all your evaluations. You trust what you've done, and you're not throwing a dart. You're not, but you still realize that all the work you've done, it might not work out for whatever reason. In time and place. 2 years ago, Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. What a nightmare because of Urban Meyer and what they had around him. A year later, you bring in Doug Peterson. You've improved. He's got all the young players. Perfect spot. So time and place is so important.
The Colts have 9 picks as of right now in the NFL draft that begins Thursday at 8 p.m. If you're in Central Indiana, be sure to join us on Fox 59 at 7:30 p.m. Thursday night for our Blue Zone pre-draft special. Also, be sure to log on fox59.com and cbs4indy.com for our live blog and instant reaction that will be running there. But anyway, draft begins Thursday 8. Rounds 2 and 3 will be Friday beginning at 7. And then rounds 4 through 7 are Saturday beginning at noon. The Colts will not have to wait too long before they get that first pick, 4th overall in round 1. They have their own pick in round 2 as well. It's the 4th pick or the 3rd pick in the second round, 35th overall. It is the 4th pick because there's only 31 picks in the first round. Isn't that right? Yes, because somebody lost there. Miami lost their first round pick this year. That's right.
Tampering.
There
are rules.
Can't do it. They have a 3rd round pick at 79th overall. 1 4th round pick, 106th overall, 2 in the 5th round, 3 in the 5th round, and 2 in the 7th round. So 9 total picks right there, all but guaranteed. Those will not be the places that they pick on.
You think Ballard trades?
I think he'll trade around. I don't know if he trades 4, but I think after that, all bets are off, so to speak, even though I would bet yes.
I bet they stay put
at 4?
First day, second day.
First day and second day,
Yeah.
I think. Okay. Yeah. They traded around the second day yesterday. They traded back into that round, right, to get Nick Cross.
Nick Cross.
Yeah. So, excuse me. So Chap's saying they stay put
first day, second day, and then third day the itch will overcome him.
Wheeling and dealing.
And he'll probably make none of these picks.
Right. Yeah, 3/5. I mean, come on now.
That's right. Hey, package 3/5 and get a 4th.
Exactly.
Why not?
They do have needs, obviously.
No question.
Specific needs. So if there's one guy who's on your board, like Chris mentioned it the other day, like when you're looking at the board and you see, at the time, Darius Leonard and Braden Smith and no one else at those positions that you need, Chris said he went up to the board and was like, well, we got to take these guys.
They're the last 2 up there.
Exactly. They're the only 2. Here we go. So so they take them, and the rest is history with those 2. It turned out to be good picks. But this year, obvious need is quarterback. The Colts need a guy to stop this quarterback carousel. It's going to be 6 or 7 quarterbacks in 6 or 7 years.
It'll be 6 regardless. It'll be 6 and 6.
And then maybe 7th. Maybe 7 next year. Depends on who starts game
it
one
could
this year.
Minshew this year. And
exactly. Then whoever next year. So we're not putting it past them. Cornerback. They traded, or they let both their they traded one away, one starting corner last year in Stephon Gilmore, and they let their other starting corner in Brandon Faison go. So they need to get some more depth at least there, even if you like the guys who were your depth last year to step into bigger roles. At cornerback.
Name some guys you liked from the depth standpoint last year.
I was just saying, Isaiah Rodgers and would probably be the only one. Dallas Flowers got some smoke at the end of the year, but not enough for anyone to say, yeah, I like him going into the starting corner.
It's the weakest position I can think about over the past several years at this point of the season.
You like Kenny Moore, but again, last year was not one of his best years. Into a different scheme with Gus Bradley. So yes, cornerback, another big need. After that, offensive line, another depth thing, Joe, because that was something that we've talked about here on the podcast is if you're looking for areas, cornerback was one of them, but offensive line was so depressing last year to watch, and they've done absolutely nothing to counter that going into next year right now through free agency.
Still baffles me. It's almost like they don't learn from past mistakes. I could go on for a while about that and cornerback, about how they just haven't addressed glaring needs with anybody. But, we're here to talk about the draft today and how they might address them with some picks.
That's right. Wide receiver as well, another position that could be needy. After that, I wouldn't be surprised if they go linebacker because Okereke is gone. If they find a guy that they like, they're going to fill that out again. You have your 3 guys that you like up top, but after that, it's your linebackers right now. You have Grant Stewart, you have Grant Stewart, you have JoJo Doman. So guys who were special teamers guys last year, even if you like them to be more like to take another step up, into a role where they could kind of rotate in on defense, you need other guys who are going to be special teamers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they take linebacker too.
And you don't know about Shaq.
No, exactly.
You
and
just
that's another
don't know.
reason. Yeah. So it'd be nice to have somebody that you know a little bit more about. Maybe running back if you want somebody to take over that Nyheim Hines role. Wide receiver, we already said, unless you want Ashton Doolin and Mike Strawn as your 4th and 5th, and just to stick with that and be completely comfortable with that. I don't know. So there's a lot of places that you can piece guys in.
One of their strongest depth-wise by numbers is tight end.
Mm-hmm. Very, I think.
And Ballard said this is one of the best tight end groups he's seen in recent memory.
Yep.
Would he throw you a
curve? Take a tight end at 35th overall there in the second round?
I go back to, remember the Andrew Luck year in 2012? Remember the next 3 picks? Tight end, T.Y. Hilton.
Yep.
So
Kobe Fleener, Dwayne Allen, T.Y. All of them produced at least a little bit when they were here.
And I went back and looked in the 98 season with Peyton Manning. It was Jerome Pathon, E.J. Green, and then they traded up in round 4 to get Steve McKinney, who was a heck of a guard. So we've talked about this. If you're going to invest your future in a quarterback, which they better, you better make sure this guy is surrounded by competent, quality people.
Which brings us back to the Trevor Lawrence point that you made earlier. You need competent people around your star quarterback, or your rookie quarterback, or your second-year quarterback, or it doesn't matter.
Or he's going to fail.
It doesn't matter.
Go back to David Carr in 2002. They beat
Do we have to?
They beat the football out of him. That's not on David Carr. That's not on the quarterback. It's on the franchise. It's on the organization and the GM and the head coach. That's why I however they do this, and we'll disagree with stuff that Chris Ballard does because that's what we do. But I do trust that he and Shane Steichen know what they're doing. And I think they will do right by this quarterback.
Well, when we go to the draft, Chris Ballard will be the one who's in charge. He'll be the one that eventually the buck stops with him. And we spoke with him last week on Friday. Very first thing, Chap, you asked him, do you have any idea what's going to happen? Or do you have a good plan about what's going to happen 1 through 3? What did he tell you?
Nope.
Yep.
No idea. And I believe him.
Yep, I do too.
Because what he said later on is if you check 32 mock drafts, how many will agree? Not many. So there's so much, and this is, to me, is directly a result of 4 or 5 quarterbacks being NFL caliber prospects. Mm-hmm. When you have that, you're going to have people differ on how they line them up, and when you have that, you're going to have uncertainty at the top of the draft. When you have quarterback needy teams, which you have every year.
Mm-hmm. So there are always rumors, Joe, that the Colts are targeting one player, and this year the one that's cropped up most has been Will Levis. And it seems like from what I've seen, it never comes from the Colts. It comes from my sources around the league tell me the Colts are really like Will Levis. So take that for what you will. But Ballard has also pointed out that they're not locking in on one player because kind of on what he told us on Friday that there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to hang around for 1 through 3. So the Colts are certainly going to be an interesting pick in this draft because there's a lot of unknown, both in terms of what's going to happen above them, what exactly people like about the Colts, but there is not really one target right now, and you really can't target just one player when you're. The only time you can target one player is when you're number 1, and after that, you've got to do your due diligence on everybody.
Yeah, exactly, and the Colts very well might like Will Levis, but they might like one of the other quarterbacks just as much, if not more.
Right.
So they'll just have to see who falls to them. I don't know where all this smoke about the Colts to the Levis is coming from, or Levis to the Colts is coming from, but Ballard said it's not coming from him.
Chris added, I just always love to read the reports that the Colts love this guy, and they're dialed in on this guy. Who'd that come from? Didn't come from me. And he's right.
I believe him.
Yeah, he's not telling anyone right now what's going down in there. On strong positions, he said it's a good offensive line draft, which is good. Tight end is as good as he's ever seen, like you said earlier, Chap. Let's see, secondary, cornerback in particular, really good depth, which is good for them. Defensive line, another area they could probably add somebody if they really wanted to compete, defensive line or in the middle on the defensive tackle area. All really good depth around there, he said. The Colts have first-round grades, he says, on 17 different prospects, which is when there are 31 picks in the first round. There's going to be a lot near the end of the first round that is pick your poison. I say, but pick your flavor is probably the better expression. I'd imagine there's going to be some names that get called at the end of this first round that have not been on a lot of first round mock drafts because people are going to be taking guys with second round grades up there. People that not everybody loves, but different teams are going to like some guys. And maybe we even see some people trade into the end of the first round. The Colts are at 35. They don't have to trade too high up to get into the end of the first round if they want to do it. They'd have to give up something, obviously, to get there from the second round into the first. And I'm not saying that's the most likely scenario by any stretch, but if there's somebody that's dropping for them or for someone else that they really like, that they have one of those first round grades on, we could see some action near the end of the first round.
If you like a guy, go get him. We've talked about that from 4 to 3 or whatever, but if from 35 to 28, which would cost you, I don't know, I haven't got my trusty, trade value board out, but give up a third round pick. I don't know, a third and a 5. I don't know.
What about 3 fifth-round picks?
There you go. Give all 3 of those fifth-round picks. Move up.
He loves them picks, and I just, and I understand that, but I would really rather get a guy I really, really believe in, like you say, moving a few picks into the first round again, although then you're getting into first round contracts and it gets a little bit more dicey. I'd rather have a guy at the top of round 2 than at the bottom of round 1.
Well, you can get to keep him for 5 years maybe if you take him in the first round.
How'd that work out for the New York Giants and Daniel Jones? I don't know.
I was going to say how'd it work out for Lamar Jackson, but then all of a sudden it's gotten really messy.
There's good or bad, but if you like a guy, go get him. And one follow-up, I asked Ballard about this, how many first round grades, and he said 17. And the obvious follow-up that I didn't ask was, well, how many of these quarterbacks you have with first-round grades of the 5? Probably, you think maybe 4? What would he say? 3?
I don't know if he would tell you. Like, I really like if he got a total moment of honesty.
We always talk to Ballard after the draft, which is an invaluable time, and we can't use it.
No,
because it's
all off the record.
But he told me he'll tell me how he had these quarterbacks ranked. I'm really curious. One thing that I and we'll get into this with our predictions and all this, I'm convinced that I've said that if you like a guy, you go to 3 and you get him to ensure you get him. I've kind of come to the conclusion that they don't see that much difference in, I don't want to say 1 to 4, but in 2 to 4. And they're not willing to give up. What would it take, Joe, to move up from 4 to 3?
All
a 2 and a 3
on how many other people want number 3.
Yeah, it would cost at least your second round pick that you have there at 35.
And more,
I think.
more.
Yeah,
but I think they're going to like who is there at 4, and I just don't think they want to give up that to get a guy that's a little bit better. So I think they stay put.
And I felt that same way too. Like just from listening to him talk, both at the combine and last week, mainly at the combine, where like kind of the prevailing notion, as we've said, if there's one guy, you go get him.
Go get him.
Like if you have one guy you like, you trade and you move up to 1 to get him.
But if you do that, you make a strong move to 1.
Right. And since they didn't do that, and what Chris said at the combine was, I don't think you have to move up. Like he was really casting some doubt on that line of thinking, that if there's a guy, you have to go get him. So it gives me the idea that he doesn't think there's just one guy, unless, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
And what would change between now and tomorrow that he wakes up in the morning and says, I was wrong. We really need to get ourselves positioned to get player X at 3. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I would call it unlikely to move up right now on that side. I'll never say never.
And move back.
Yeah, I'll never say never, but I would find it very unlikely. There are always rumors that pop up, even a day or two before the draft. And one seems to have grown out of Reddit this week. A random user, I just looked this up before the show, a user named SaleAgreeable2834 posted that apparently Will Levis has been telling his friends and family he's going to get picked by the Carolina Panthers, number 1 overall.
This isn't like second hand. Is this like third or fourth hand? Or
this is probably completely false, Mike. This is what Reddit is. But apparently, because of this post getting well over 1,000 upvotes, and probably more by now, or by the time you all read this or listen to this podcast, Will Levis moved up from like plus 4,000 to be the first overall pick odds all the way to like plus 450, which is an astronomical rise. Now, Bryce Young is still by far the heavy favorite in the minus 1,000 range to be the first overall pick, Joe. But those late draft rumors are ever intriguing. And from this user, again, this excuse me, this article that I really brought up quickly said that apparently even this Reddit user was just created last week. So it's not like this person who's been on Chap's just shaking his head because he doesn't even know what Reddit is.
It could even just be the sports book trying to get some more money on Levis, so that
Right.
because if everyone knows it's Bryce Young, no one's going to make any bets against the first pick being Bryce Young.
Right.
So it's always interesting when you see the lines move in Vegas, or I guess not even Vegas anymore, but on the sports books, because obviously they don't want to be wrong and lose money, but at the same time, if there's an overwhelming favorite, they want to get money on both sides or different areas as well, so they could just maximize their profits there. So it's really interesting to see where that's coming from. I would be shocked if Will Levis went to the Carolina Panthers.
I've heard more rumblings that Richardson goes number one
Richardson,
than Will Levis.
Levis does seem like a Frank Reich guy, though. Carson Wentz 2.0's got a Bible verse on his bicep. Like that just seems like a Frank Reich guy. But I think at this point it's going to be Bryce Young. I think it's a little more interesting that Levis's odds to go number 2 to Houston now. He's a favorite to go number 2 at this point.
Levis apparently was asked about this actually because he's doing some NFL play 60 or play football event. He just said, "Don't believe everything you read." So that was.
He said while wearing a Colts jersey.
Right. No, it was an NFL Play 60
right.
shirt, Chap. Okay. So yes, but yes,
It was a Colts baseball hat.
might have been a Colts baseball hat. It was a backwards blue hat. So who knows? It could have been. You never know. The Texans' latest rumors could pass on a quarterback at number 2. I think we touched on this last week, but some believe Houston could instead select edge rusher Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech or Will Anderson out of Alabama. And that's just based on the thought that the Texans like Bryce Young and none of the other quarterbacks all that much. And so DeMeco Ryans, their new head coach, could just stick with a defensive player there, Chap. And he has more leeway than anybody at the top of the draft because he's a first-year head coach. He's coming in as a defensive-minded head coach. So I think if there's any team that needs a quarterback that would say, yeah, we'll punt this for next year, they would be the ones to do it.
And look who they've won with in Frisco.
Right.
Not exactly one of those
Mr. Irrelevant.
Right. So now, I still believe Houston needs to take a quarterback at 2. But what if they take the edge rusher and then they take a quarterback at 12? Mm-hmm. Which is sound reasoning if you're willing to not have that quarterback be there at 12.
Right.
That's the problem you run into when your fallback is you've got to hope the guy's there or you move up from 12 because there are teams that need quarterbacks before you get to 12. You know, gosh,
bunch of them.
But Detroit, you can argue, and Atlanta and
Seattle
and
Vegas, Tennessee.
So I could see that being their plan. But if you're sitting there and that's your plan, and then when it gets to 12, the QBs are gone, then you've got Davis Mills and Case Keenum.
Yep.
That's got to rouse your fan base.
Woohoo. Yeah.
So it's but that's the one. The second pick is intriguing, and so was 3.
Yep. I think after number 1, because I don't buy the Will Levis news for a minute, I think Bryce Young is going number 1. Like 2, 3, and 4 are incredibly intriguing. This year, maybe more so than years past. I don't want to say that's definitely for sure. It's certainly part because we're part of it now as just media
and
that covers the team.
And it's quarterbacks.
Exactly, and it's all about quarterbacks. And they're quarterbacks that are not perfect quarterbacks. It's not the Peyton Manning. It's not the Trevor Lawrence. It's not those guys. It's the guy that's like a Patrick Mahomes that it was picked 10th overall, I believe, his year. Josh Allen, who was picked 8th overall, I believe, his year. Guys that are coming out with real questions as to whether they can contribute and be stars in the NFL. Some of them work. Some of them turn into Josh Rosen, the other Josh, you know? So there's so much on the line for these GMs and head coaches, for these quarterbacks themselves, and we'll find out sooner rather than later what's going to happen. Finally, Joe will not be able to sleep tonight.
I think Houston's really going to be that domino that controls everything else that happens in the draft. Do they take that defensive player, and all of a sudden there's 3 quarterbacks still available after Houston picks? Do they take Will Levis, the sportsbook favorite to go number 2 right now? And then teams who previously thought Stroud wasn't going to be available, now he suddenly is, and that number 3 pick with Arizona heats up and gets a lot more pricey. What Houston does in this draft is going to make all the difference to everything else that happens. I think comparing it to that 2018 draft with Josh Allen, I saw that was the first time in NFL history, I believe, that 4 quarterbacks went in the first 10 picks, and only one of them panned out. Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Josh Rosen. I think you can probably call them all busts at this point. Maybe Mayfield has the biggest opportunity to resurrect his career.
With his 4th team?
With his 4th team.
But he's still not, like, I would still call him a bust right now because he was the number 1 overall pick. You don't expect him to go to 4.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And so I expect this to be similar. I think 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the first 10 picks. I think 2 or 3 of them are probably going to be busts.
If Houston takes a quarterback at 2, the first 4 picks will be quarterbacks.
You think so?
Someone's going to trade up for 3?
Well, no, because then somebody trades up to 3, because again, like you said, if Houston takes a defensive end, then all of a sudden maybe the Colts are enticed to move to 3, because all of a sudden a guy that they didn't think would be there might be there, and he is a cut above the other one. So it's intriguing. With the desperation and the urgency of the position, it seems you take a quarterback, but I'm more convinced than anything that the Cardinals don't pick at 3. Somebody's going to jump the Colts that wants a quarterback. But I just think it's fascinating. It's just fascinating this year.
And I'm gonna say one time before we get into our predictions that just because the Colts pick 4th does not mean they're going to get the 4th best quarterback. I'm going to look back even further a little bit than you guys, because this was kind of in the growth of my sports fandom back when it was, I don't know exactly what year the draft was. It was 96 or 97, I believe. It was the Tim Couch, Akili Smith, Donovan McNabb draft. 1, 2, 3. 99. So there you go.
The year after Peyton.
1999. It was right after Peyton Manning. I mean, Tim Couch goes number 1, the Kentucky quarterback to the Browns. Then the Bengals take Akili Smith out of Oregon. After that, Donovan McNabb goes to the Eagles, leads them to 4 straight NFC championships in the early 2000s. Those other 2 guys do absolutely nothing in the league. There's been a long growth of quarterback evaluations and expectations since then. But
and these guys fail after all these teams do all the work. They have all the information. They're sold on these guys, and a lot of times they're still wrong.
Yep. So, if the teams are wrong, that means we can be wrong, and nobody will be the wiser.
Deny it.
Exactly. We'll just erase this podcast from the archives, and it'll be like it's never happened. So, how will the first 4 picks fall? We've got Mike Chappell at mchappell51.
I wrote mine down.
Covering the Colts for 40 years now. 40 seasons, Mike Chappell. Woo!
I feel all of them.
There you go. We've got Joe Hopkins. We've got me at DaveG_sports. And we're going to get into what we think is going to happen. Chap, you being the Ballyhooed senior member of our organization, you get the honor of going first, and then I'll go after that. And Joe, who loves the NFL draft almost as much as his wife and dog, we'll go third.
I'm driven by this is a quarterback league, and I've got I get history being made with quarterbacks being taken with the first 4 picks.
Let's go.
Bryce Young to Carolina, Stroud to Houston, and then I've got somebody trading Arizona to 3. I don't know, Vegas, Atlanta, somebody, and taking Richardson. I think they move up for Richardson, and that leaves the Colts with Will Levis. And because now if Stroud's there, still on the board, then I think the Colts have. I take Stroud. My preference is Stroud because I prefer. The older you get, you kind of lose some of the risk in life. Mm-hmm. You just do. You like sort of. I hate to say Stroud's a safe bet, but I think he's a safer bet. But knowing the way teams are driven by urgency, I see 4 quarterbacks taking off the first 4 picks, and the Colts ending up with Will Levis and his mayonnaise in his coffee.
All right. Well, he can keep the mayonnaise. I'll take the coffee
if he wins, he can put peanut butter in his coffee. I don't care.
Who cares?
That's way less weird. Yeah. That's way less strange than mayo.
Probably so. All right. My turn. Here we go. At number 1, the Carolina Panthers will take Bryce Young, quarterback out of Alabama. So that brings us to number 2 and what you really believe about Houston and what they like or what they don't like. Like I said earlier, if there is any team to not take a quarterback, I think it's them. Just because of the situation they're in, the head coach they have. Their fan base is already apathetic. That's
dangerous.
Exactly, it really is. And the Colts are dangerously close to being that. And you want to rip them back from the brink, and that's why I don't think the Colts can pass up a quarterback. But anyway, like I said, I think since the Houston fan base is already apathetic, you can get away with not taking a quarterback there too. So I think I'm buying the smoke here with them not taking a quarterback at number 2 overall, and I think they take Will Anderson at number 2. It's between him and Wilson. A lot of people are saying Wilson just because of his specific pass rushing traits. But I think DeMeco Ryans will take the guy who's a little bit more of a well-rounded defensive end and is still a heck of a pass rusher himself in Will Anderson there at number 2. That brings us to number 3 in Arizona. Someone's going to trade up. And whether that's the Colts or someone else, I'm going to lean towards someone else right now, kind of because of what we said earlier, that I don't buy that Chris Ballard feels like he needs to move up right now. So I think another team will trade up to number 3 overall, and I think that team is going to be the Raiders. I think the Raiders package something to move up to 3rd overall, and I think they take C.J. Stroud right there at number 3. So Stroud goes to Vegas, and that brings us to the Colts at number 4, who have the choice between Will Levis and Anthony Richardson.
That's tough.
It is. Like that and what I'm trying to read into what Chris Ballard said on Friday, which is a dangerous prospect. Because I think that you can certainly do that too much, and maybe it's a fool's errand to try to do so. But one thing that just stuck out to me from what he said on Friday was something that was kind of unprovoked, and those are the things that to me like just catch my attention. He spoke for he gave a couple sentences unprovoked about Jim Bob Cooter, and what he really liked talking to Jim Bob Cooter, and about what he likes on offense, and like how creative he is on offense, and he was really impressed by some of his discussions that he has had with Jim Bob Cooter about what he wants to do on the offensive side of the ball. So me reading into that is Chris Ballard is really impressed with some unique ideas that they want to do on offense. And so that makes me think they have a really unique quarterback that they want to bring in and lead that offense. If it wasn't that impressive, they would go with more of the vanilla, which is Stroud, like you were saying earlier, Chap, if he would fall to them. But I even think that if Stroud falls to them, they might be leaning toward Anthony Richardson out of Florida right now. So I think that they like Minshew. They feel comfortable with Minshew.
He's your QB in 2023.
Yes, exactly. And you have Anthony Richardson there to learn for a while and maybe even go with that Donovan McNabb theory from years ago when Doug Peterson himself was the starting quarterback week 1 for Philadelphia, and he started for 5 to 10 games, and then McNabb came in. And what the Bills did with Josh Allen, it was somebody else there. We even talked about this a couple weeks ago. I've already forgotten who the Bills had starting week 1 there. Whether it was Ryan Fitzpatrick or a slew of other players who came through Buffalo for a while to start a quarterback, but before Josh Allen was ready to take over. But that's what I'm leaning toward right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's Levis if they want to go that route. But like I said, just what Chris Ballard said about Jim Bob Cooter just perked my ears up, and because his ears have been perked up about what he thinks this offense can do and be creative. And there's no more intriguing quarterback in this class, certainly, than Anthony Richardson. So I've got him going to the Colts at number 4 overall right now. It completely matches what Chris Ballard has done at so many other positions, is take the guy who is the freak athlete and then get guys who are football lifers, quote unquote, and then get them here and put them into the system and see what they can do. I realize quarterback is a different beast than getting Shaquille Leonard here and just throwing him into the defense and causing him telling him to be the maniac and make plays. But that's kind of my thoughts on how it's going to go down, which means it will be absolutely nothing like that. But that's my 1 through 4. I've got Bryce Young to the Panthers. I've got Will Anderson to the Texans. I've got the Raiders trading up to take C.J. Stroud. I've got the Colts taking Anthony Richardson at number 4. Joe, what you got?
I like it. The Colts came away with.
I knew you'd
Richardson,
like it.
guy.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll obviously Bryce Young number 1. He's the only quarterback in this class I would take above Richardson. Number 2, I am buying the Houston Texans' Will Levis smoke. I think the Texans. I mean, this is year 1 for D'Amico Ryans. This is year 3 for general manager Nick Caserio. He has to find his quarterback. I think he's feeling kind of the similar pressure as Chris Ballard is in. You need to find that guy. You've been here several years. It's time to find that guy. And I think they go with Will Levis. I'm not sure how much of a factor C.J. Stroud having the same agent as Deshaun Watson really is, or if that's a factor at all. But I think some of the smoke around Stroud kind of starting to fall in this draft is real, and maybe teams aren't as high as him, being someone who can carry you as some of the other guys. So I think they take Levis because of his tremendous traits and because of the way he had to kind of carry that Kentucky team. You look at this Houston team, he's going to have to do the same thing here because they don't have a lot around him. Much better offensive line, probably solid line in Houston, but I think they go with Levis based on his traits and his ability to make something when there's not a lot there. Number 3, I would love for the Cardinals to just stick and pick. I want it to happen so much. I would love to believe the recent smoke around the report that Kyler Murray is begging the Cardinals to take Paris Johnson from Ohio State and get him another tackle, and the new regime in Arizona says, you know what? Let's protect our franchise quarterback because he just tore his ACL. We have so much money invested in him. Let's get him that tackle. But I just think it makes too much sense for the Cardinals to trade down because they have a lot of holes on that roster, and they could probably still get a good tackle later in this draft.
They might be able to get Paris Johnson Jr. when they trade down. Depends on who they trade with.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I do think he'll probably be a top 10 pick, but probably not a top 5 pick. So they might be able to maneuver and go back up and get him, or maybe they like one of the other tackles. I think, and as much as I hate to say this, Tennessee is a prime team to trade right above the Colts there. New regime in Tennessee as well. Tannehill's on the final year of his contract. They haven't cut him because it's costing them a lot of money, but I've seen the reports that they've already basically given up on Malik Willis, who looked terrible in his limited time last year.
He looked really bad.
It was not good.
So I think they trade up and they go get Stroud, and the new GM's got his new quarterback. Doesn't have to start right away, but he can ride into the future knowing that he's already got his quarterback, and then just fill in holes from there. Which leaves the Colts with my guy, who I wanted them to take the entire time.
You talked yourself into it.
It was always going to be Richardson, Mike. It was always going to be Anthony Richardson. I just love this guy. I would take him over Stroud if I had the choice. I think he has the ability to carry a football team. He's only 20 years old. He's probably the most physically gifted football player, not just quarterback, but football player in this draft. And all the reports, every time I've seen him speak, his letter that he wrote through the NFLPA, everything I've seen out of him kind of reminds me of that Jalen Hurts mentality, that I will not be outworked. I will do everything that I can control. I will do everything 110% to make sure that I am not a failure. And I think the Colts are going to love that. I think Steichen's going to go get his Jalen Hurts 2.0, a guy who, coming into the league, had some developing to do, but had the work ethic and the mentality to put in the work to do that developing and to make those strides. And I think with creative offensive coaches, Richardson will probably be starting halfway through the year, maybe the last quarter of the season, and they can run a lot of RPOs with him. I mean, you're a defensive end trying to decide, do you go try and tackle Richardson or Jonathan Taylor on this, option play here? Good luck with that. So that's how I think the first 4 picks go down. First time in history, quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope some other defensive players or the Cardinals do pick an offensive lineman or something like that, so the Colts have more of a choice at quarterback and don't just get the leftovers. But that if I had to just walk through logically, putting myself in each team's shoes, I think that's probably what's going to happen.
All right, there we go. Now you know, and knowing is half the battle. Really, all of us think quarterback. None of us think that the Colts would pass on quarterback, which is not a surprise.
One guy we haven't mentioned is Hendon Hooker.
Right.
Does somebody trade back to get him?
I could see if the Texans like Hooker passing on a quarterback at 2, and
if Houston passes on a quarterback at 2, I've seen a lot of mocks that Will Levis will be there at 12. I don't tend to believe that. Hendon Hooker will be.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely, yeah.
Yep.
And one thing on the Colts and their quarterbacks, I've heard the talk, well, which one is most NFL ready to start?
I don't care.
It's irrelevant.
I care who's going to be the best in 2 years.
And if Richardson's ready to take some snaps at week 9 or 10, fine. This team, they won't say it. I don't know how they can say it to appease the fan base, but they're pointing towards 2024, 2025. They just are. And when you're rebooting a quarterback, that's what you're doing. You're not, they were 11-5 with Andrew Luck because he was special, and he won them
a bunch of games,
5 or 6 games.
Yeah,
I still remember the game in Detroit when he hit Donnie Avery with a game-winning touchdown, and on and on. These guys, that's not who this is. These guys, whoever they get, it's pointing towards 2-3 years down the road, and you hope this year, 2023, you're just competitive and you're showing signs of getting better.
So go ahead, Joe.
I think a dark horse at quarterback, and I wanted to put them trading up instead of the Titans, but I just couldn't because they're so far back.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of reports and smoke that Minnesota really wants to go get their next quarterback. They probably think they've hit their ceiling with Kirk Cousins. He takes so much of the salary cap, and you've seen them kind of have to shed players this offseason that they probably would like to keep because of that. So they pick at like 22 or 23.
Boy, that's a long way to go.
That's a long way to go, all the way up to 3. Maybe they find a way to get into the top 10 if a player starts to sink, or maybe they trade up to the teens for Hooker or something of that nature. But I think Minnesota is kind of a dark horse there in the quarterback market.
Well, if we get into day 2, and then the Colts will be on the clock pretty quickly, their 4th pick in the 2nd round, there are positions, like there are going to be cornerbacks there available because there's a lot of cornerbacks that people really like.
I've seen 5 or 6.
Yeah, in the first round, perhaps, yes.
Mm-hmm.
So if any of them slip into the 2nd round, you're going to have your option there. Looks like there's some wide receivers there. If you want to add some depth to that area, we've like right now they're tight ends. You got Mo Alley-Cox, who is a fine blocker and doesn't do much in the passing game.
Doesn't do enough consistently in the passing game.
Yes. You've got Jelani Woods, who's going into his 2nd year, who's still intriguing. You've got Alec Ogletree coming off his ACL injury last year, who was having a tremendous camp, and I was really looking forward to seeing what he could do, unfortunately, with that knee injury. Then you sign Pharaoh Brown, who's more of a blocker anyway. He's not much of a pass catcher. But Those are 4 guys, like 4 NFL caliber guys.
Kylan Granson.
And Kylan Granson, who I forgot already. Look at that. And then you have a bunch of tight ends who are really good in this
And a
year's
bunch
draft.
of them young.
Yeah.
So that just kind of conflicts. I know the Colts love tight ends, but it's just not one of your needs right now. And you have young guys who you think
That
can
would be
develop.
a luxury pick. And the problem you're going to run into is when you pick at 35, I bet you have a tight end ranked higher on your board than another position, perhaps.
not be
maybe
surprised.
not corner.
I would kind of be surprised if the Colts pick at 35.
They might trade down.
I think unless one of those 17 first rounders, is still there.
Yeah.
I think they probably trade down, try and get an extra pick and do some wheeling and dealing, because if they're all similarly ranked, or they go, we just can't get ourselves to take a tight end, like let's just trade down a little bit and get one of the other guys.
Somebody wants to come up and get a tight end.
Or maybe they just, it's a scenario like the Leonard Braden Smith scenario where they're like, well, we have this guy's a mid-second round pick, so we could trade down, but we don't like anyone after him, so let's just take him here. I think Julius Brents, a cornerback out of Kansas State.
And Warren Central, Dub C, let's go.
Just fits Gus Bradley's defense so well. Big corner, 6'3", tested tremendously for a cornerback of his size.
Is 35 too soon for him? So maybe trading back would...
I don't think it's too soon for him, especially how he fits your scheme. Cornerback's definitely one of those positions where it's so team dependent, because teams ask their cornerbacks to do different things, but he would just really fit that mold of that bump and run press. He'd be, in the same mold as that Richard Sherman, but maybe more athletic. So I think he would make a lot of sense and fill the biggest hole, but he doesn't help your quarterback is the only thing. So it's corner, receiver, and then offensive line, because you still need line.
Yeah, if you're going with corner, I like Brent's a lot too. Obviously, as you hear, I like the guy out of Ole Miss, Jonathan Mingo, the receiver there. You look at what Ole Miss has produced. I mean, they have DK Metcalf, they have AJ Brown, and he kind of looks similar. He's not the tallest guy to AJ Brown, but he's big. Like, he's got some size to him, and he's a really, really athletic guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's a pick, or if you have one starting guard there, because you're probably still looking for a starter at right guard.
I would hate to take a guard at 35.
I know, Chap, but Ballard would not. That's the thing. You would hate it. He would not. So that's why I say that's very much a
There's
possibility.
one draft
there.
where he took a guard at 6 and another guard at, 36?
Exactly. So I would not be surprised.
I value getting a receiver before a corner because I want to help the quarterback.
Yep.
But I'm just guessing that there will be a better value at corner at 35 than there is at receiver.
Possible, yes.
I think a lot of the receivers from, outside of the top 4-ish are guys who,
You put him in a hat.
Yeah, the difference between 5 and 15 is not that big. So maybe at second round they feel comfortable passing at receiver and going and getting the receiver in the third round, or getting back up into the second round to get another receiver, because they do have 3 fifth-round picks. I just see that as Chris Ballard's going to trade some of those fifth-round picks. Up, yeah.
Don't be trading back to get 2 more 6.
Oh,
they
God.
got no 6.
Just like, God, please, no.
Stop it. He loves doing that. He's like, you know what? Let me keep trading so I get 3 seventh-round picks, half of which won't make the roster.
I just don't want to see them wait until the 7th round to grab some swing offensive tackle. Like, if you do
They
that,
did
that's
that one
okay.
year.
But yeah,
They
like I said, they drafted Javon Patterson and Jackson Barton in the 7th round when you knew they needed offensive line help. And Chris comes out and he's got a big smile on his face. He's like, I knew I was going to draft offensive line.
You guys happy now?
Well, no.
No, I would like you.
No. So
Because, again, I think we said this last week, there has to be 3 offensive linemen not here yet. They're going to factor in. A couple of draft picks. I kind of think they've got 2 or 3 free agents
in mind,
and they've told the agent, "Hey, let's see how the draft goes out." A lineman, a corner.
yeah, I agree.
I really believe that. So, but I think that third day, couple of linemen early, like you said, not round 7. Give him a chance.
Right.
Bernhard Reinhard was a 3, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. So give him a chance to where they're ready to play at some level as a rookie.
Yeah. I've said already, I think that they go linebacker somewhere here.
They always go linebacker.
Exactly. They're going to
And
get a
they're good at
linebacker. Yeah, they've got some really good guys.
We talking
really
day
good
3 now?
linebackers. Yes, on to day 3. I think maybe day 3 is the time where you go out and take a shot at your Nyheim Hines guy. He was a 4th-round pick.
Yeah, I think running back. They're going to draft a running back somewhere.
What was Jordan Wilkins, a 5?
I think he was a 5, yeah. And he stuck there for
Mack
4
was a
solid
4.
years. Marlon Mack was a 4. Yeah, exactly.
Ballard?
So
Vic Ballard?
Vic Ballard was
he a 4?
Was he a Grigson pick?
he was a Grigson pick for sure. Yeah, I can't remember.
He was in the
when
luck.
he
He
was.
was in the luck draft.
Yes,
yeah,
he was.
So
That was-
I think they kind of want their pass catching back because we saw times last year where JT kind of struggled in that pass blocking role.
Yeah, big time.
So I think they kind of want a 3rd down back, both to spell JT, but then also just to give their offense another wrinkle.
Yep.
To not get your quarterback hurt.
Yeah.
That too.
That'd be ideal.
That'd be good.
That'd be more ideal than the alternative.
I think they could still go defensive end. I mean, I think Kwity Paye is good when he's healthy, and hopefully he'll be able to stay healthy this year. Jury's still out on Dio. He kind of picked it up at the end of last year, but he could just be another Tyquan Lewis who's just very solid.
Which is not a knock, but
It's
you need
not
more.
you need more.
Right.
And they sign help me on that.
Samson Ebukam.
Ebukam.
I think he's going to be a nice pass rushing threat, but I don't think he's ever going to be an elite guy.
He's less than 250 pounds. I mean, is that a guy that
He's
you
at-
really
was it
want
the
to
Leo?
keep out there? Yeah, setting your edge. And yeah, I know that the Yannick Ngakoue was similar. He was a smaller defensive end too. So yeah, he's kind of the Leo position out there. So it's a unique. Yeah.
I think they could still use a defensive end. Maybe a 3rd D tackle later. Maybe that's one of the 5th-round picks or 7th-round picks, something like that.
Yeah.
Of course, at some point in the draft, Ballard, I run the live blog, and I like to get the images of the player. At some point in the draft, Ballard's going to pick a guy who there is no Getty or AP
of
image
course.
of. It's going to be from
North Southwestern
no one's
San
ever
Diego
heard of
State.
its state.
Yes.
And it's going to be usually a big guy. So that's going to be a pick at some point.
Like Mike Strawn out of College of Charleston. You're trying to find a Getty image of him. It's like, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's when you just put a Colts helmet
Exactly.
on the page.
if I have to. So we'll see at some point. But I think those are the positions. I'd be kind of surprised if they picked a safety. They have a lot of youth at safety already. Blackman, Thomas, and then Nick Cross, who we're still hoping can show you a little bit more. I mean, we basically named all the positions. Fullback? You guys think they draft a fullback this year?
Probably not. No. Eagles didn't have a fullback last year, so I don't think Steichen has any real interest in it. So, especially if you have Anthony Richardson, he's your fullback, right? You plop him behind the line on 3rd and 1, push him forward, and
Give
4 yards.
Granson a job. Have him.
There you go,
I mean, he's
perfect.
basically fullback sized anyway.
Yeah, make him your H-back for real.
So yeah, I mean, we basically listed just about all
Every
the
position
positions
on the team. Yes, exactly. They could use
this
this.
team
They could
won
use this.
4 games
They could
last
use
year.
this. Exactly.
You
They're
got
bad.
a kicker and you got a punter.
And that's more reason to me just not to trade up, to not trade up to 3, because you have too many other holes that you're trying to fill right now. And
Unless you hate Levis and love Stroud
Right.
or
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
one might be. Yeah,
Yes, that's
I'm with you.
priority
I think
one.
that comes into
It trumps.
account maybe if Houston doesn't take a quarterback.
Yeah.
It adds somebody to your list.
Mm-hmm.
But we really don't know.
We do not, and we will find out beginning Thursday, shortly after 8 o'clock. Once again, if you are here in Central Indiana, we encourage you to tune into Fox 59 at 7:30 p.m. for our Blue Zone Draft Preview Show. We'll be live in Kansas City for the event, hopefully talking to whoever the Colts take, assuming he's there, which the quarterbacks are all supposed to be there. So knock on wood. It's not going to be like when they took Quentin Nelson 5-6 years ago, and Quentin was not there at the draft at 6 overall. So we go down to Dallas, and we're trying to interview whoever the Colts take there high in the draft, and well, he decided not to show up, and decided to party with family instead, which is fine. Like I'm not blasting that at all. I'm just saying big trip out there, and then we don't even get to talk to whoever the Colts take. I do not think it's going to happen this year.
How many guys are in the green room? Have you seen the list?
There's about 20. right
I've
around
seen
there. I
the
think.
list. The green room looks really cool in
Yeah.
Kansas City. This is the old train station.
Nice,
See, I want to see the list, and then I want to see the prop bets on who's still sitting there.
right? The last one. There's all 4 quarterbacks. I think are there, like all the big 4. So
What about Hookers? Is he
I
gonna
don't
be
think he's there. No, I don't think Hooker's going. But I could be wrong
There's
about that.
always somebody sitting
is.
there by his lonesome with his girlfriend, and,
and then-
she's saying like, "What the heck? You told me I dressed up, and here I am."
Well, then that girlfriend's getting a lot of TV time probably
That's
because you
true.
keep panning to her in the room. So then hopefully you turn into Aaron Rodgers and you have a 20-year career in the NFL and teams are still trading for you at 39 years old.
Who was the one that looked the worst? Was it Brady Quinn? He was sitting there it looked like he was south. He was having like a shot every time his name wasn't called.
Yeah, maybe. I can't remember. But yeah.
The draft is a great time.
It is.
And one thing that the league found out, they've always had this thing about wanting to move the combine from city to city. They struck gold by moving the draft from city to city. They really did.
Yep.
And I know the Colts have a serious interest in bringing it here. Maybe in the next 4 or 5 years it will be. But it's if they could turn this into 5 days, they would. Mm-hmm. Because people cannot get enough.
They're going to turn it into 3 months. You're going to have one draft pick a day from the Super Bowl Monday all the way till here in late May. So there you go. That's what it's
I'm
gonna
ready
be.
tomorrow.
Ratings will be off the charts.
I'll have my wings ordered. I'll have the live blog laptop on my
Seriously.
lap. A couple cold beverages. Maybe not crack until after the first round's over. Maybe after the Colts pick.
We'll see that on day 2. Joe's post will be a
The
little bit
spelling
squirrely
errors.
because
Yeah,
the
spelling
adult
errors.
beverages take over.
You can find that on fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Get on there now. Read all of Mike's work that he's put together over the past couple weeks and months leading up to the draft with so much more in-depth stuff from everything we've talked about today, stuff we've talked about on the podcast before. Subscribe to us. Get us delivered to your podcast listening device as soon as we drop. You can follow us on Twitter at Colts Blue Zone as well. And the next time we talk to you, the Colts will probably have a new starting quarterback, or at least a new rookie quarterback, even if he's not going to be starting game 1. So,
And then we rally around that guy.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter who it is or
Put him
which
up on
ones you
Lucas Oil
like.
right
So you'll
away.
rally around somebody not named Anthony Richardson?
I'll rally. Yeah, whoever. Even if it's Will Levis. Like, there's things to like about Levis. If it's Hendon Hooker, I'll rally around Hendon Hooker. Like, there's no point. It's like when a president gets drafted. If you didn't like him, you got to hope he does well. You're still in the country.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not going anywhere. You know. Let's hope that we hit a home run here when you're not expecting to. So looking forward to this week, this draft. And so much content to come. Also, we have a Blue Zone draft after the draft special. If you're in Central Indiana, Fox 59 on Sunday at 11 p.m. as well. So add that one to your list of must-see TV too. So for Mike Chappell, Joe Hopkins, I'm Dave Griffiths. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. An intriguing week it will be on the Colts Blue Zone podcast.